Your job should be talking and having conversations with all the homeowners in your database. And I always say it's not if you are planning on selling, it's when you are planning on selling. And if I can identify when it is going to be important for James to sell his home by asking a question like,
when are you going to sell the horses so that I could go buy another house? That would be relevant.
That one sounded like it had some steam on it, James. Is there anything else you got to get off your chest?
You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered Podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered Podcast. I'm your co-host,
yes, sir,
James Dwiggins, along with Keith.
What up,
Dwiggins? Title on his slide. What's going on, my friend?
Man, I'm good. We just had an awesome conversation with Ryan Young, the CEO of Fello. I haven't met anybody yet who obsesses about database and the importance of it in your CRM, whatever you want to call it, more than him. I mean, this guy. Yeah.
He is one of the top teams in the U.S. So
yes.
He's going to talk about his company, but I just wanted to add he is one of you. So
yes.
just a little bit of context here.
Well, in the venture capital world, they call it eating your own dog food, right? Like he has literally got an incubator where he tests all of this in his team and then develops best practices and then brings it to his product. So you're right. Someone who's in the trenches. We talked about what steps he'd take to build a team right now, the mistakes that he sees people make when they start a team. We had a deep discussion around AI, what it could mean, some of the scary stuff and some of the cool stuff. He shared the biggest problem he sees most agents make with their CRM, the biggest mistake that people make in how they approach their CRM, and he gave us some really good advice on how to segment and switch up your cadence so that your people who know you, trust you, and love you are having the best experience possible. So great conversation. You're going to dig it. Tactical. Enjoy the tactics on this one. Put it in your ears, kids.
Ryan, welcome to the podcast where we're all laughing like idiots because Keith has a ritual that he does before we start the show every time. I have to ask him if he's ready to go. He does this whole thing where he gets himself ready to go and then he goes.
I stay ready. I stay ready, son.
Are you excited to be here? Because we are. So it's going to be a hell of a day today.
I wasn't before the green room, but post green room, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Hey, audience, just so you know, James had his Wheaties today. He is on one, so brace yourself. This is going to be a great show.
I have been enjoying trolling the crap out of everybody on social media today, so I'm having a good time with it. Ryan, this is about you, my friend. So
welcome.
Let's dive in. We got you for a bit. We've got some interesting stories I want to talk about. I want to talk about your company. But first, let's give the viewers and listeners a little bit about your background. I've got you as an agent for 16 plus years, but then you launched your company 7 years ago. So you've been in the industry, sounds like pretty much your whole life, like Keith and I.
Yeah.
So give us a little background.
Background is like most realtors. I'm Harvard educated. Oh wait, no, that's a different story.
Keith, we're not supposed to laugh at that, by the way.
Well, it is funny.
Actually, I graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. I am a chef. I got burnt out by the ripe age of 26 years old. I said, what do you do after you've invested a decade into the culinary world at 26 and you have a quarter life crisis? I called my parents up in Cleveland, Ohio, who were realtors and still are. And I said, Mom, Dad, I'm moving back to Cleveland. And
thanks for paying for culinary school. I'm moving back home.
What do you think? Right.
To get into real estate.
They were like confused and excited all at the same time. It was also 2009.
Oh.
And so I think they were like, are you sure you want to do this? But they didn't talk me out of it. They just said, come home. You need to come home. I was living in Vegas at the time. Moved back to Cleveland, lived in their basement for 2 years. Thought I made the biggest mistake of my life being 28 years old, living in their basement. In 2009, 10, 11, just fighting
you had an
through
excuse
a really
though
tough
for
market.
it. You could play that one off.
And I, told I'd meet girls and tell them my roommates go to bed early. So it was one of those things I had to go to their place. Like it was a rough, the late 20s were a rough time in my life.
The roommates were your parents?
Yeah, the roommates were my parents, but it all worked out. Fast forward awesome. 15 years later, here we are.
Look at you.
We run a really nice real estate team. The young team in Cleveland, historically, last 5 years been on Real Trends as one of the top teams in the state, and then started a company, Fello, a few years back. So get to run two really cool businesses, and I love the industry that we're in.
Awesome.
Keith, do you have a follow-up? Because I have one.
Go ahead, James. Normally I do.
Sleeping early.
You go first.
I probably should have left it out.
Is it like a French fried duck fat recipe?
Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah.
So Ryan, I have a question for you. As a chef, what kind of food did you cook at home? Did you just eat like
Hot
shit
Pockets.
Delivery food, and because you got tired of
100%?
Yeah.
Chefs,
I dated a chef.
As a chef, dirtiest eating habits, energy drinks, anything that can toast, bake, microwave, like it is amazing. And I've literally cooked at some of the best restaurants in the world. And yet when you get out of work, all you want is something that is so processed and that is shortening your lifespan. But it's
easy.
But it's easy, and it's just one of those things. There's something about it that just scratches the itch.
I asked because Keith knows back in my earlier days I dated a chef, and I'm a total food snob, and I don't shy away from it. And
he does not.
And I was like dating this chef. She's amazing, and I met her because literally I met her at a function.
Wow.
And like the worst food ever was being cooked at her house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that in for context.
The funny thing is I've been with my wife now for almost a decade and won her over the first 6 months with just laying out night after night the most insane meals.
Haven't cooked since.
She's like, that was the ultimate bait and switch. Like, you want to talk about the guaranteed sale or it's like there's no bigger bait and switch than what you pulled on me of cooking for me the first 6 months. And it's like
brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get off that. Keith, let's hit us on our rapid fires.
We're happy to announce that we're starting our dating advice pod, and this is actually
episode. Our new podcast.
All right,
yeah.
Rapid fire questions. This I know you're gonna have good answers because I could look behind you and see stacks and stacks of books, which I'm a fan of. Favorite book or podcast this year ever on your reread every year list? Doesn't matter. Just books you think people should be reading and why, or podcasts.
Podcast that I'm really into is the All In podcast.
Yeah, I listen to that one religiously too.
It's macroeconomics, it's investing, it's politics, and it's like, I'm a layman, and it's like, and it's in layman's terms, it's so it's just for me, like, it's a weekly way for me to educate on just kind of what's going on in the tech world, stuff like that. Book, Danny Meyer's Setting the Table. It's a phenomenal book. I actually just had our team read it for our planning advance last year.
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
It's phenomenal. It's all about just Danny Meyers, who's now Shake Shack, but before that, Gramercy Tavern. It's just one of probably the best restaurateurs in the country. And it just talks about all these exceptional experiences of how he elevated customer experiences and made them lifelong fans. And it's you can apply it to any business.
I met him, by the way. I saw him speak at an event in New York. He's really amazing.
He's special.
Yeah.
Great share. I'll order it and read it.
By the way, who did the branding for Shake Shack was Pentagram. Just a side note. We're familiar with that company. One of the best design firms in the world. You ever want to check out their stuff, go to pentagram.com. They're really cool. So, all right, mine. If you could have lunch with someone current or historical, who would it be and why?
I have a feeling like a lot of people say like Steve Jobs or, I would say my grandpa, grandpa Ken, who, reason being is, grew up with nothing, ended up growing a massive business, serial entrepreneur, grew to, extremely wealthy and then lost it all.
Damn.
And died dirt poor, broke. And so it would be interesting just to hear through his lens, what happened, how it happened. And then also you get the added benefit of being able to hear some fun family stories, some heritage, some stuff like that. So you kind of get a little bit of both the entrepreneurial side of like what really happened. And like, I feel like sometimes it's just as important to learn from the people that had failure, and not only just success. So I think that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Good one. We've had
every good leader has failures though. I mean, they just do. You meet them and that's how you pick yourself up along the way, So Keith, you want to start us out?
I do. Now we're going to dig into Fello and, tech and all that stuff. But since you have a successful real estate team, which you mentioned it's part of your background, we have a lot of agents and potential team leads who listen. What advice, if someone was starting a team now, like I've got my sales business. It's kind of cranking. I'm thinking I want to start a sales team. What advice would you give someone thinking about starting a team like tomorrow? They're listening to this podcast. They're going to start it tomorrow. What advice would you give them?
I would probably just take a play out of the playbook that I ran, which was work your ass off, lead with revenue. Okay. Like focus on building your own brand, not someone else's. All right. And what I found was in 2009, 10, 11 was the reason why I got to where we are today is because I built the skill set of jumping on the phones. I wasn't afraid to pick up the phones. I did a lot of outbound. And I just outworked everyone. And I think what we all know, the three of us know, is that this industry, there is an abundance of opportunities for anyone that's willing to put in the work. And I applied a lot of that restaurant work ethic where I was working 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it was like, I applied that to the real estate industry. And it's just crazy how quickly I started to see traction, even in a really tough market.
Yeah. One thing,
I know it's not like a sexy answer, what people want to hear, but it's like,
first of all, I love it when people's answers is, and James and I's friend Jim Fischetti tells us this all the time. Work works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
work works.
Yeah. Like that. And then the other piece that you mentioned that I would double click on is, I think I actually find the biggest mistake that I see people make when they're starting a team is they start it too early, not too late. And what you said is lead with revenue. Like you shouldn't start a team until you can't handle all the inbound leads, right?
100%.
And when you have too many listing presentations, then it's time to give away some buyer consultations, right? but
100%.
until then, like just keep building the funnel until you're so busy you need help, and then that's when it's time to start your team.
And that's exactly how we scaled. We've always been listing based. I didn't realize it's uncommon, but after starting Fello, and we'll talk more about it, I didn't realize how the majority of larger teams around the country are more buyer heavy. And for me, what the scale happened naturally or organically of I was going on so many listing appointments. I got to a point where I was losing opportunities because I wasn't following up with them because I was showing, $100,000, $200,000 buyer. I was out all day with them in my car, out of towners, reload, whatever it is. And it's like, I was losing listings because I was, it's like
that's the
millions
start of
of
team
dollars
then.
sitting on post. That's when you start a team of like millions of dollars sitting on a Post-it note, Post-it notes all over my desk. And it's like, I just all of a sudden realized like, wait, what do I like to do?
Right.
Where is my highest value return on time? And I just realized that for me, it was keep focusing on listings. Listings are the pillar of our business. They create open house opportunities. They drive a significant amount of inbound. And it was like, okay, then let's have someone work the buyers.
Right.
And then naturally we kind of scaled through that MRE model.
By the way, that business hasn't changed in the entire lifetime that Keith and I have been in business, or my grandfather or my parents. Like you get listings, you can get both sides of the transaction.
100%.
So it's interesting to hear that. You know what I love about what you just said though was it's just also we're not even really talking about like lead gen and stuff. You're just talking about working hard and doing things that candidly 95% of the people are too scared to do.
Yeah.
And it works.
Right.
It works. Work works.
Yeah.
Work works.
Yeah.
It's so, I can promise you, I was fortunate enough, we did this whole 30-day listing challenge over the last 30 days. And every day we were doing live webinars with, some really big leaders, and we had Gary Keller on. And so it was me and Gary, and he was talking about, if you just lead generate for every day, 3 hours, 2 hours, just lead generate 1 hour a day. Even if you suck at it, over time, you're eventually just going to get better if you just do it. And so it's repetition. Like work works, repetition, it's like, you don't overcomplicate this business. I see so many people overcomplicating it. And now I have a different lens because I'm more B2B, but it's like, don't overcomplicate the business. Work works, and you will be great.
When so many people, and then we can move on, but I love this topic. So many people, they disguise their rejection avoidance as preparation,
100%.
right? Like there's no rejection in picking a CRM. There's no rejection in researching what to say when you call somebody. There's no rejection
100%.
in ordering, some book on better conversion or click conversion funnels or whatever. And but you got to get those reps in the rejection zone to get better at the craft. And so many people, it's so easy. I've been guilty of it in my career too. It's so easy to fill your day with things that aren't dollar productive, but they're like dollar productive adjacent. So it's really easy to trick yourself into thinking you've been highly productive when the truth is you were just getting ready to get ready.
Spot on.
Can I follow up on this? Because this is a conversation that we're having this often, and I get it when I'm traveling or doing, keynotes, or I'm meeting with, venture funds or whatever. Like this whole thing about like AI in the business and where the agent sits, and what I'm going to tie these two together, because what you're doing is actually the human side. You're getting belly to belly with somebody, you're having a conversation, and you're working a relationship. I'm gonna bring this up because my dear friend Jeff Turner spoke at one of our events recently, and he brought up this like it's a large language model called Sesame. Have you seen this, by the way, Ryan?
I haven't.
Oh my God. So for viewers and listeners, you need to go follow Jeff and look up Sesame. It's so scary that it can now mimic your voice, and then it will talk like you. And he sent me something that I thought was him actually leaving a message with me, and it wasn't. And it's that good. So I want to tie this. Do you still think, are you of the belief that this human connection part is going to be essential go forward? And does AI change that? Because we're going to get into tech here, and I want to talk about what you guys are doing, but there's so much fear about where this is. And I'll preface this one comment. I saw a presentation by Jeff a year ago where he was very balanced on on AI. And this latest presentation was like, I wanted to go crawl into a hole and like just get ammunition and canned peaches in a bunker. So like, what's your take? What's your thoughts?
Yeah. So here, this is what I'm very invested in right now.
Canned peaches.
Not canned peaches. I like them fresh. Only eat them in season. I'm very invested. Fello.ai just launched on Monday. So Congrats. We are like very deep in intelligence. And I'm also very deep. We launched a luxury division within the young team about 3 years ago. That's really it's really doing well. And so I see the luxury side of our industry being extremely relational. And I feel like it's somewhat immune to intelligence and automation, and, it's to transaction. It's much more of a bespoke relational type of, sector or segment essentially of our industry. I think that intelligence, I don't think that like real estate agents will get replaced. I really believe that I don't see that in the next 5 years, at least. I do think that real estate agents are going to start becoming a lot more efficient in leveraging intelligence to automate a lot of the things that they do. When we talked about, when Keith mentioned, you get so busy on listing appointments, so you get a buyer agent. Well, I think the first thing that happens is all the administrative and operational side of our industry. I think it's completely overtaken by like this agentic layer, essentially, of like, that is where, if you are not invested or educating yourself on it, I feel like you are going to be behind, because I feel like an agent that leverages technology and artificial intelligence is going to be in front of their clients a lot more, is going to be creating more relationships with people, and is going to see massive acceleration of their business and of productivity.
Yeah. I'll piggyback on that, unless you've got an immediate response, James. No, I agree with you. Like, I lose sleep over both, right? Do I lose sleep over the fact that potentially someday someone might buy a house end to end with an AI bot? Yeah, I consider that. I think about it. I meditate on it. But I think that is I'm not as worried about, if I were an agent today, I'm not as worried about being replaced by that as I am by a widening gap in the haves and the have-nots in residential real estate. Because I believe that the agents who deeply integrate and include AI and AI-powered products in their process will gain share
100%.
From agents who don't. And so I think that's like a 90% likelihood, where I think the other one is like a 5% likelihood. And so the process, like what am I more afraid of? Well, I'm more afraid of losing my business to an AI empowered agent than I am in losing my business to an end-to-end AI solution for I'll buy a house just from a bot.
I'll tell you, man, that Sesame thing freaks me out.
Why? What are you so afraid of?
It's just so the way the conversations are happening and the way that Jeff talks to it and it's talking back to him.
Sure.
It's very much like that movie Her with Scarlett Johansson. It's just a trip.
No, look, my 13-year-old has a chat bot that she can talk to. It's like a friend. She logs in and tells it about her day and gives her kind, gracious feedback. And like, what are we so worried? So I can record people are using all sorts of technology tools like SlideDial or whatever to communicate virtually. There's automated emails that go out. There's all these tools that we've been using for a long time that have no human at the switch. And it just happens. Like the obsessive fear that people have of getting tricked. Like Photoshop's been around for a long time, right? Yet people aren't like, it didn't end the world. Why is this different?
Well, I think because if you look at some of the videos that have been done that aren't actually the people, take a photo and it creates a whole image of you and now your voice is matched. I mean, there could be a lot of confusion that comes from that.
There's a lot of confusion now. Have you been on social media in the last 2 years?
No, it's all accurate. I know everything on social media is accurate.
It's nothing but misinformation out there.
Would you guys fly in an autonomous plane?
You do today. The pilots basically take care of like 4%.
Would you fly in an autonomous plane without a pilot?
No. And they won't have one anytime soon.
Would I fly in an autonomous plane without a pilot? Not short term, but long term.
Would you drive an autonomous car without a driver?
No, because I'm a control freak. I have a problem with that.
So here's the only reason why I asked this is because I'm using extremes, right? Of like, and I'm going to look at the real estate transaction of all transactions as an extreme. I don't think until we're living our lives, and we will all probably get in some point in our lives in a plane that doesn't have a pilot and a car that doesn't have a driver. I don't think that until we are, when you think of the extremes of where we're leveraging intelligence, maybe we'll all have a little, robot dog, right?
Sure.
And maybe we'll have a robot showing partner. So we'll start to leverage some of the tasks.
Or like when I think about it, I think it's more likely that you might have a showing bot, like a literal robot that you put at every house, right?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
That could, but I still see us being attached to the relationship and guidance.
Totally agree.
Now, that being said, in a decade from now, maybe we're flying on planes and we're driving in cars without pilots and drivers, and we're facilitating.
The truth is, it'll be safer.
That's 100%. And maybe people are saying without human error from an agent, right? Of paperwork, clerical errors on paperwork or I've seen lawsuits happen because of errors.
Sure.
I think eventually the whole world will have this deeper relationship with robotics and intelligence. But I don't think right now, I think it is still such a large transaction. It's still such a special transaction that I think that I would keep it at one of the extremes on the spectrum of like where I would with planes and cars and life and death safety type of things until people say, I'm just going to trust a robot to do this. I still believe that we provide a significant amount of value in just building a relationship and trust amongst the client.
It's also a very infrequent transaction. So people need help with that. I like having the conversation, just get people's perspectives on it. And I like irritating Keith when I ask those questions.
No, I'm not irritated. I just like this. People's fear fantasies are legitimate. You take the fear.
My
feelings
matter, Keith.
I know. I'm trying to honor them.
Year over year, it gets more and more accepted. And once again, in 5 years from now, we will be having a completely different. You mentioned LLMs, and like you're seeing the growth of these models between Llama and OpenAI and Grok and all these different we're seeing these models progress. DeepSeek now, and it's just these models are progressing so fast that it's like this conversation will be so different in 5 years from now, and then it will be the extremes of how close are we to them.
Yeah.
I like that. All right.
Let's switch gears. I guess let's talk a little bit about Fello. That's the company that you founded. I heard someone describe it to me once as middleware to drive conversion. So I don't know if you like that as a summary for Fello. So feel free to, what is Fello and how do you define it? What does it do? And then we'll dig into what you've learned in the building of it. And you can teach us more about how to sell more houses and be better at the craft.
So I look at Fello in kind of 3 steps. We are basically a partner to a CRM. And the first thing that we've observed is CRMs have terrible data or terrible inputs, right? There's terrible hygiene, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So the first thing we really focus on is how do we ultimately make sure that the data within your CRM is accurate? And one of the things that's interesting, we're incubating about 50 million contacts. And we see when they first come into Fello, less than 20% of them have an address attached to them. Okay. So what that means is we have an industry that is obsessed with buyer leads, and they acquire millions and millions and millions of buyer leads, and they stash them in their CRM. And it basically makes their CRM essentially become a liability because they throw them in there and they do nothing with them. So the first thing we need to do is identify who are the homeowners and make sure that they live at the address that is attached to them. Then is the middleware component, which is it's my, to the culinary side, it's the analogy is
prep work.
You can't grow great produce in crap soil, right? Like,
Now
let's make sure we have
on that.
How much we have nutrient soil?
How much of that is garbage in, garbage out? So how much of that is like, because the agents, and I'm not being dismissive of it. My CRM was a steaming hot mess too when I was an agent, because it would be like, I don't know. It'd be James the barista, because I don't know his last name, but 100%. He gives me my coffee every morning. And someday I want to sell him a house, and I got his cell phone number, but I don't have his email or his home address.
That would make complete sense to me, knowing Keith, by the way.
If I have James the barista, all of a sudden at this number, all of a sudden I can find where James the barista lives and identify if he owns the house or not, and then identify what his contact information is, right?
So you do data, I can take data maintenance,
data pendant, data cleanup, all that, because that's the key to the middleware component, which is the automated messaging. Because no matter how great our messages are, if the input is bad, if it's James barista and we don't know where he lives, what message could I possibly send him? So the more information I can identify before I start the automation of messaging, the much better message, the more segmented I could be, the more relevant messaging I can get to him. Yeah. So you start with the first step, which is cleaning and scrubbing and constantly scrubbing the database. Then you turn on the automation, which is really centered. We lean towards seller messaging. It's just something 2.5 years ago when we launched this, we were kind of like first to market with it. We're very obsessed with helping agents generate listings out of their database. And so now we start automating all these different messages to these homeowners that you never even knew you had. And then the last component is how do we help you start converting them? And while we don't call the leads for you, we don't go on the listing appointments for you, what we do is, because in your Fello account, you have public record and MLS data and mortgage data, we show you in real time anyone in your database that is listing their home with or without you. And so we offer this awareness component of saying, Key, look, man, you've had James in your database as James the barista, right? We found
Guys, I don't
that
drink
he owns
coffee.
a home.
I'm feeling very violated here.
It could be tea. They just call them baristas.
You serve the coffee, right? You don't drink it. You don't get high on your own supply. It's one of those things that now all of a sudden we can say James lives at 123 Main Street, and then you decided not to do anything for James. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, James listed his home, and you're sitting here spending more money on more leads that are going right to the pond or whatever it is when you have winnable opportunities in your database.
Right.
So
I'm a little stuck on the data cleanup part, because I just think that's where so many agents get it wrong. I mean, an example
100%.
of sometimes when I'm doing a training, I'll be like, okay, how many people do you have in your database? Just shout it out. Someone will be like 200. Someone else will be like 2,000. I'll be like, awesome. Now, of those, how many do you have name, telephone number, email address, and physical address for? And then the answer goes from 2,000 to like 200. I'd be like, great. You don't have a 2,000 person database. You have a 200 person database.
100%.
Because if you don't have that minimum contact information, they're not in your database, right? That's just, it's an incomplete record. And sometimes we trick ourselves in this industry to make us feel like we're busier than we are, or we have more potential for business than we do, right? And it feels great to say at an event, I've got 2,000 people in my database. But just because you uploaded a title list with just a physical address and nothing else, that's not in your database. That's not in your sphere of influence. You are not consistently and persistently marketing to those people. So sometimes I feel like agents just get off on the wrong foot because they aren't asking the difficult questions about data and what they really have, so they can figure out where they want to go. Does that resonate as true with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've observed it now, not only with the young team, but also with, the thousands of clients that we have, is like, there has to be, that kind of first step to recovery is awareness, or, it's like, you have to accept the fact that, like, if you truly want to drive more business out of your database, you need to make an investment into your database. And that's building a database, and that's continuing like the hygiene component of the database. I get to speak on all these stages, and I normally talk about, do you rent or do you own your business? And one of the things that I feel very strongly about in the way we've built the Yum team is the Yum team sells about 500 homes a year. We have 15 agents. We are 60% plus year over year listing based, right? And we're not a flex team. But we have a killer database that we've made large investments into, not only building it, but also continuing to maintain it. And we generate a significant amount of listings out of it. And because
how much
of
that,
is
referral? Just curious.
35%. So it's like one of those things that it's like, we are so, one of the things that I've been out of production for 4 years, and yet we continue to see, the type of production that we do. And I'm very fortunate because I know I'm a part of a bunch of large networks and groups. And it's like, when we talk about margin, I just feel like the margins of the majority of these teams is unacceptable for me, for the liability that we absorb.
And is that because they have a big lead spend and you don't?
Because they have a massive lead spend, right? A lot of them are spending 40% attached cost of sale to 70% of their transactions. And it's like, where's the margin? And that doesn't include, and you talk about all these class action suits, and, it's like, we won't go down that whole path, but it's like, you're going to make razor thin margins and expose yourself to all this liability to be on a list of top teams around the country when, and it's something I just feel very passionate about, is like, let's bring profit back to this business. And profit is a byproduct of providing a great service and something of value to the consumer. But like, if you have to buy the opportunity in order to get there, it is really hard to make ends meet and actually scale like a respectable, scalable business.
Yeah, you could do half the production and make comparable or more money.
100%.
Right. Yeah.
Let me ask you real quick.
And why? And real quick, and it's funny because you mentioned about like scaling a team.
Yeah.
I know so many individual agents. One of the things that people chase teams because they chase all these people that stand on the stages and talk about the big businesses they've built and stuff like that. But I know so many individual agents that are so much more profitable than these big teams because they have no cost of sale. They have no lead expense. They build a great organic lead, referral based business. Yet they don't get all the trophies,
sure.
But it's like at the end of the day, they get the profit trophy. And I know a lot of them that are really happy and they run great businesses. And so when people are thinking, do I build a team? You have to be really committed to what building a team, operationally, what that actually looks like and where the real opportunity is. And if you do it the right way, and I really feel like I've made a lot of mistakes, but one of the things I did well was the way I built the Yum team allowed me to build a whole nother business while the Yum team was continuing to sell 500 homes a year, 200 million in gross in volume a year. Like that allowed me to scale and leverage my time to building other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is some of the nurturing that you guys have built in? Like how so you've figured out how to make the data valid, so you've got an actual database.
Yeah.
How are you tailoring content to the individuals? So it's not just I've seen a lot of CRM systems like, here's the one size fits all. And I'm just like, no one's going to read any of that shit. They're just going to throw it out. So
my normal recommendation is we segment messaging based on a couple different data points on price point. So for example, on the Yum team, we have some cash offer messaging that's anyone under 750,000. And then we have luxury messaging, which is over 750 in our market in Northeast Ohio. We consider that luxury. Don't laugh. We have how long home ownership. So someone that's been in their home for over 20 years is seeing different messaging. They're seeing messaging about maintenance and downsizing and stuff like that versus a newer homeowner is seeing different messaging. So we normally take these different data points and identify, price point, vintage of home, or home ownership. And then on top of it, we do engagement. So if someone is actively looking at their home value, if they're actively looking at what their net proceeds would be and stuff like that, the messaging is morphed to more of a high intent message versus if someone very casually looks at it, we want to throttle back messaging to be very subtle and, not aggressive, but like keeping them somewhat engaged so that they stay close to the product. So a lot of it, the frequency and the intent of messaging is based on all these different data points, and their actual engagement is how we kind of throttle back and forth.
So you're not sending out recipe cards?
Recipe cards. I eat Hot Pockets. We've identified that. So it's like,
sorry, I had to bring that in.
I'm doing 20 course tasting menus and Hot Pockets. The median doesn't fall in between.
Somewhere in between. In between.
So you're basically working really hard on trying to get that content to be very specific to the individual. So the agent's not having to come up with it. You're providing a lot of that messaging so that they're nurturing the client the way they'd want to be nurtured.
Segmentation. So the worst part of our industry is that we take our entire database, and this is why we don't convert out of our database and why we ultimately have to buy 40% cost of sale type of opportunities or success fee leads. We send them all don't forget to set your clock back or a recipe card to a first-time home buyer, to a homeowner that's been in their home for 30 years, for someone that just bought their home yesterday.
Well, and more importantly, like everything in my life except my microwave automatically changes the time. So maybe just email me the instructions on how to change the time on my microwave. That's what I need.
So what's happening is we're sending irrelevant, useless content, and then they ultimately unsubscribe or, disengage with it. And we then look at it and say, oh, well, this didn't work. This was a waste of time. Let me just buy bottom of funnel leads.
Yeah.
But if you actually send relevant information, if you actually know who are the homeowners in your database and send them messages about home ownership, and the people that don't own a home in your database and talk to them about the benefits of home ownership, or if I know that James owns 4 or more houses, I'm sending him messaging about investor and wealth building through real estate, right? So it's like, I want to make sure that it's the right message to the right person at the right time. This is where intelligence becomes really good because intelligence can in real time analyze all those data points and identify what is the right message to James today and to Keith today or tomorrow. And then ultimately you actually find interesting and engaging. And then what you have to do is all the messaging has weights to them, right? And so if I see that Keith is really into this type of messaging, we spend more time focusing on that messaging. And if you think of Amazon or Netflix, here's your recommended,
you might like,
because you bought this, you might like this, because you watch this. This is where it needs to go.
Yeah. I also, go ahead, James.
No, go ahead.
All right.
No, please.
My favorite thing, there's a lot that I like about what you said and what your product does, but too often I think agents base their cadence and approach on their needs and not the client's level of interest. Meaning you throttle 100%. You throttle up and down based off of engagement. Meaning if they're checking the value at multiple times, that person should get more communication, not less. And if they haven't clicked on anything, maybe it's time to switch up the messaging or throttle it back. And too often I find we're communicating with our database based around our needs and need for income and not their needs and desire to purchase or sell. And the right way to do it is around what they need in the moment, not what we need in the moment.
You know how many homeowners we talk out of selling their homes? We're just like, it's not the right time, right? We can't help you accomplish your goals. It's unrealistic of what your price is, or it doesn't make sense because of where your rate is. And ultimately they become lifelong loyal fans. I mentioned Danny Meyer setting the table, and it's like our profit, our sales is a byproduct of doing right by the consumer. And ultimately we find that or the customer, we find that I don't want to win a listing and then it sit for 4 months and then they fire me. It's like that becomes detrimental to not only my relationship with them, but to my brand. Yeah. And so it's like we build trust by actually making recommendations of what's in their best interest. And you have to be comfortable not focusing on what's in your best interest right now, because I always tell this, we talk about lead generation for sellers. If you if we do our job and we put in the work, your job should be talking and having conversations with all the homeowners in your database. And I always say it's not if you are planning on selling, it's when you are planning on selling. And if I can identify when it is going to be important for James to sell his home by asking a question like, if there was an opportunity.
When are you going to sell the horses so that
when
you can buy another house?
Exactly,
that would be relevant.
Right? That would be relevant. And James might say like, look, I have a 4-year-old.
That one sounded like it had some steam on it, James. Is there anything else?
You might say like, I have a 4-year-old and I don't want to leave the school district until they become 10 and they move into a new school district. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I have a seller in 6 years from now. I need to have relevant content for the next 6 years and a follow-up plan until then. But that's your timeline. It's not about me. I'm still going to be selling real estate in 6 years from now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting. I'm going to have one follow-up and then I know Keith will take us out with a question here. What's interesting is you're doing this sort of, you've got somebody in the database. What is your take on the companies that are doing this sort of life cycle of homeownership? So they're focused on after the deal closed, bringing everything into one location, a hub, the mortgage person, the inspector, like everybody into this location where they're focused on the home ownership part now, where they're telling the homeowner, change the filters every 6 months. And here's the service provider to do that. Like, do you think that's the evolution of CRM nurturing during that process before they buy? And then there's this other segment of, for lack of a better word, CRM after. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because I think you posted about the other day, but when you look at the acquisitions of Mr. Cooper and Redfin from Rocket, it's like you think of vertical integration. It's like we're going to purchase the servicer, we're going to purchase the real estate, and it's like you look at lifetime value of the customer. Keep it completely vertically integrated. And so what's happening is like if they can own that customer from not only during when they purchase the home, but to when they service the loan, and there probably you will see there's going to be a lot more M&A over the next year or two of like that once again just keeps it, monopolizes essentially the customer. From a business owner, I really respect it because I see all these gaps and holes in our business where we lose the opportunity. And one of the things, is we are founders, we don't look at this in the real estate industry the way we do in the software industry. We talk a lot about lifetime value. Okay. We talk about, we acquire a customer for X, customer acquisition costs, and what is the lifetime value compared to essentially how much we acquire that customer for. In real estate, we look at it as one transaction, and we don't look at, if I do a deal with James, I don't look at it as the lifetime value of James to me is 3 more transactions over the next 25 years.
Right.
Versus even if I lose you as an opportunity, I don't say, well, I lost you this time, but in 7 years from now, I'm going to get you back and I'm going to help you buy and sell. We look at it as a one and done, a very transactional type of business. And so I think if we can, as an industry, start looking at each customer in our database's lifetime value and what they could be worth over the course of the next 20 years, 30 years that we're in business, I think all of a sudden the economics and the way we approach this completely changes.
Not to mention the referrals from that customer too. Put in that same
100%.
Yeah.
And like to stack that all into the, the unit economics of lifetime value of like, how much are we even benefiting of what you're bringing to us? Now all of a sudden you become our marketing distribution.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, due to the infrequent nature of the transaction, it's hard for real estate professionals to really think through the lens of lifetime value, but you have to, right?
They think that literally, and I'm guilty of it from my real estate when I wear my real estate hat of saying, oh, I can't believe they listed without me. I'll never speak to them again. Right. Like, I can't believe my past clients sold their home and bought a home without me. They're dead to me. And it's like, no, really, it's like, we're competitive as a young team. I failed, but then it's like, okay, I got to win them back on the next time they're ready to transact. They don't have an exclusive relationship with that other agent for their life. Just like I lost the opportunity. Imagine if we looked at it as said, okay, over the course of my 30-year career, I got them the first time, I lost them the second time. What am I going to do to win them back the third and fourth time?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it is not their job to remember you. It's your job to be memorable.
100%. Yeah. And provide relevant, consistent information to them
at a cadence that's appropriate.
Exactly.
All right. This is the question. We'll wrap up with this. We ask it of every guest just to get super tactical. So if you are an agent or a brokerage, other than getting Fello today and signing up, what's the one thing you'd implement today in your business to help it for 2025?
I would say start to become obsessed with your database and look at it like an asset. I just, that you don't have to be a Fello user. You don't have to have, you just become extremely intentional with building a quality database. And it is so old school. And it's so this methodology of like, networking and database and stuff like that seems so old school, but it's really a pendulum, our industry. And I'm starting to see it really swing back because if the leads that we are acquiring have already been acquired by someone else, right? Like the leads that we are acquiring today bought a house 5 years ago and we're on Zillow 5 years ago, and we're on Zillow 3 months ago, and on realtor.com and on all the PPC and all these other places. They're more diluted now than they've ever been. So it's like, if I can become really intentional about building a quality database, maintaining that database, and I just see that is where our industry is going. And that's where the profitable businesses, the predictable businesses will make it through all the volatility and all the changes that we're going through.
Yeah. It's a great point, man. I can't think of a better way to end than with that important reminder that your sphere of influence is the bedrock of your business. This is a trust sale. And so obsess about that and let everybody else fight for the 40% success fee stuff.
I love it.
I think it's
I
great.
love it. Keep up the amazing work, by the way. And Ryan, and genuinely for all the stuff you do for the industry. I know you're out on stages, you're sharing. I love how open you are about your own business and like what successes and failures you've had along the way, which is how people learn. So, just appreciate that very much.
Well,
so
I appreciate it. You guys are, I'm following your footsteps. It's one of those things that if I can't talk on stages about the young team and what I'm experiencing in real time, all of a sudden I'm just a vendor. I'm just talking to them as a salesperson, right? So it's like, I have found that the way I can really connect with our industry is through being a part of the industry. And it just so happens that I have a product that my team leverages and a lot of other teams do as well. But it's so much more real. And I enjoy the conversation so much more when we're talking like agent to agent, business owner to business owner.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
We'll keep it up, my friend. We appreciate you being here, and
appreciate you guys.
We'll look forward to seeing you in the hallways of some event soon. So
thanks for coming on. We'll have you back.
All right, buddy.
Cool.
Talk
Thanks,
to you soon.
Ryan.
See you guys.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Hit that subscribe button. Trust us. It's the best thing any of us will accomplish today.